morning, everybody. We almost had a cameo appearance. I am Ann Doyle with Internet2, and I am really honored to be moderating a panel this morning of colleagues who I care about dearly and also whose work I care about dearly. So today's panel is Serving the Underserved, Moving Beyond Connecting the Unconnected. And the context there is the CEOs of CANARIE in Canada, Internet2 in the US, and RedCLARA serving Latin America came together a handful of years ago and said, let's look for ways that we can work together, share and solve common challenges. And so they brought together a project team that I have had the joy of being part of. And we did a series of webinars during the pandemic when we couldn't come together in person that were fascinating around shared research. Last year, we finally got to be together and present live, and we presented a session called Connecting the Unconnected. And we looked across our regions and looked at ways to share what CANARIE was doing to reach the Nunavut region in far, far northern Canada, very geographically isolated. Efforts we were doing here in the US to reach geographically isolated, in particular, tribal colleges and universities, how to get connectivity to rural America and underserved urban America. And then in Latin America, we had a wonderful presentation on connecting Patagonia. So this year, we wanted to move beyond that, and one of the requests we have had from our communities is more help in the cybersecurity efforts across these regions. So I would like to introduce our first speaker. Al Anderson has over 30 years of IT experience. Al has forged a career at the intersection of leadership, innovation, infrastructure, and specializes in network architecture, cloud computing, IT project management, and data analysis to enhance cyber infrastructure for minority-serving institutions. He has led major initiatives including network overhauls, VoIP system implementations, and managed print solutions, and contributed to the broader CI community through past roles on the MSCC Leadership Board and as co-chair of the Program and Priorities Committee. I am really happy to say that last year Al moved from his role of CIO at Salish Kootenai College and accepted a position with the MSCC as Director of Cyber Infrastructure Programs, where he works with historically Black colleges and universities, tribal colleges and universities, and minority-serving institutions to improve their research supporting cyber infrastructure. Please welcome Al Anderson.
Thanks, Ann. We already covered this a little bit. I just wanted to emphasize where I come from is a tribal college community where I spent 30 years on the Flathead Indian Reservation there. I'm not Native myself, but that community graciously welcomed me into it, and you know, I'm still live there and I'm part of that, and it's in my heart. And sometimes you'll see that passion come out when I feel for tribal people in this land, because they have not gotten a fair shake in a lot of things. I started out as a network administrator, so I'm a network guy at the heart of everything. And I'll talk a little bit how I got into AHIC and stuff, but this is important for you to understand when I'm talking about these things. I'm coming from a position and a knowledge base of I've lived the struggles of these institutions. And so that's important for you to know that. So the challenges. So, you know, the traditional focus is, getting the bandwidth in there. There were federal programs a couple years ago, like the BTOP program, of pushing that bandwidth into schools and communities and stuff, and that's all great. But really, especially now, we know it now, it has to be a holistic approach in terms of your digital infrastructure, because if you just push a pipe in there, you're gonna have all kinds of problems. And today, those problems are, cybersecurity issues that crop up. And incidents happen because you just don't have the right things in place. And it's really a challenge for underserved institutions. There's a big constraint in personnel. A lot of these institutions are in the hinterlands. They're not easy to get to. They're far away. They don't have a ready employee base that's willing to move out in the middle of nowhere. And on top of it, they don't pay very well at all. And that's just a reality. So you're always struggling with, how do you get people to meet these different needs that I've outlined kind of here? So that was always a struggle. So somewhere along the line, there's some really smart people, started with some HBCU CIOs. I won't get into a long story, and if you want to hear about the genesis story of the MSCC, come talk to me afterwards. But essentially, some HBCU CIOs got together and through some different machinations, ended up getting connected with Anna Hunsinger at Internet2, and they wrote an initial NSF grant to start MSCC rolling forward. And the MSCC's focus through these grants, it's on MSIs, but specifically because of the grants, it's on HBCUs and TCUs that help enhance and improve their cyber infrastructure. And always harken back to when I talk about cyber infrastructure, I'm talking about that big graph there. So that's everything. All the infrastructure, networks, all that kind of stuff. So that first award was called PCOE, so that's Pilot Center of Excellence, that's right. And that main focus was doing these focused workshops where MSCC people would go to those campuses and hold workshops, intensive workshops about cyber infrastructure, educating about cyber infrastructure, just having conversations about it, getting to know the people. And this is an important thing for these schools, is the development of personal trust. That's a foundational thing, and sometimes that's lost. That personal relationship development is incredibly important. So those workshops go out there. The workshops were focused on IT people and on the faculty doing stuff. Sometimes even students would get involved. That worked really well. Another focus, especially in the second award that we got, was more helping these schools get connected to national resources, getting connected into the Internet2 system with the identity management and those types of things. I'm trying to move my thing along here because I'm running out of time and I'm long-winded.
You're fine.
So,
Totally fine.
another aspect of this is our partnerships, and we have several partnerships. An important one, and near and dear to my heart, is with AHEC, which is the American Indian Higher Ed Consortium. So all tribal colleges belong to this. And a tribal college is a federal designation. It's a very specific thing. You just don't kind of decide one day to start a tribal college. An Indian tribe might do that, but it's a very specific thing. And AHEC was formed back when tribal colleges first started, and they kind of got into the cyber infrastructure stuff. I think about 2015, they started looking at things and they got some grant money. I was part of that as being a CIO. We had a community of practice already going, and so I actually helped go out and do site visits at different tribal colleges and stuff, because fortunately my college, I had a president that really got it and gave us IT resources. He put my position into the presidential cabinet. That is really unusual at tribal colleges. So I would go out there with the AHEC folks and we'd talk and do things with other schools and try to help them improve their stuff. That's kind of how I got involved more in all of this stuff and realizing I can have a little bit bigger impact out there. But AHEC is a great partner, and we continue to partner with them today. We meet really frequently. We're good friends with them, and they got good programs going. You can't probably see my map too well, but it kind of shows all where the tribal colleges are. And I want to point this out because you're going to see in a second where the HBCUs primarily are. So if you see on the tribal colleges, they're mostly in the north, center part of the country with a few scattered a little bit around a little bit more, but there's none in the southeast. And so you'll see in a second where the HBCUs are. So HBCUs is a little bit different. So TCUs are very, in terms of their organizational, legality thing, they're very specific. They're individual, don't get wrong, they're different. Every school's different, but in terms of who they are as an institution, they're a tribal college. HBCUs are very different. There are private, big HBCUs, there are public, little HBCUs, and everything in between. And so it's a little bit harder to kind of place them because some of them have pretty good resources and others don't. This will be important in a second, I'll talk about it. What we're trying to do at MSCC is directly engage with them. We've done the bulk of the workshops that we've done have been at HBCUs where we travel there, talk to them, see what they got going. We try to get them hooked up with their local REN. That's a state-by-state thing. There's some states, where like Ornet, where the littlest school there has a 10 gig connection. And then there's other states where you go to an HBCU and have a workshop and they're like, what's a REN? So we're always trying to help them out and figure that part out. And we also do facilitation work. My two colleagues here do the bulk of that kind of work. That's direct Zoom sessions that we're always doing with people and talking to them and helping them out. These are our two specific awards. And actually we have the Collaboratory in Climate Science is a supplemental on our POCG, the middle one there. So the couple of programs that we got going here are our Proof of Concept Grant Program. We have, I think, what are we sitting at right now? Well, 4 schools roughly, and then we have a collaborative. And those are intensive programs to help improve their cyber infrastructure. And we meet with them probably bi-weekly on Zoom. We do campus visits with them. We improve and talk to them about all aspects. Some of them are ahead of the curve on this. Some of them are a little bit further behind on things, but we're moving it along. We just started a new program called the Research Catalyst Program. That's essentially a program that we're focusing on researchers and faculty to get funding to them for specific 1-year short-term projects. We just launched that Friday. We've got good interest in that, especially from faculty and researchers that are interested in things that improve their cyber infrastructure, and that runs the gamut. Lessons learned. First, it's important to tailor your solution to the institution. When we go someplace, we listen. We have pre-meetings leading up to those workshops where we listen. What do they want? What do they want to learn about? Who do they want to hear from? Who do they want to engage with? And even when we go there, we might give a presentation, but we really try to focus on having panels that are the people talking to each other. And we try to facilitate that because often we find that the faculty don't talk to IT until we get there, which is, as a CIO, I get it because that was, as a recovering CIO, I've lived that where they wouldn't talk to me ever. Listening, I've got that a couple times there. Some specific lessons learned, and I mentioned it already. External internet REN connections vary widely. There's geographic constraints, there's political constraints based on some are state schools, some are private schools, and they're not allowed to connect to the state network, or it's a tribal college and they're just not allowed to connect to anything. It's all over the map. You have to navigate that with each school. Identity management. In terms of federation, most TCUs and HBCUs are not federated at this point, but we have a handful of TCUs, I think, 6 now, 5, 6, are federated, and we're continuing to kind of push that out as an important thing they need to do. Most of the schools are relying on Enter ID and Active Directory for their identity management. And in terms of IM actual management, it varies widely. Cybersecurity, most TCUs have had an external cybersecurity assessment that AHEC facilitated several years ago, and they've been working on their recommendations, and they'll probably go through another cycle to improve that. And again, that was all over the map. Some schools were pretty good. Some schools, it was scary when you heard about what their reports were doing. And I'm almost finished. HBCUs, same thing. Many had external assessments done, but MSCC doesn't necessarily have access to that data unless we engage with them directly. Many TCUs and HBCUs don't have a dedicated CISO. They rely on outside services or just rely on their CIO to carry that role, or their directors or whatever. Most have basic cybersecurity infrastructure in place, such as firewalls, endpoint management, et cetera. Most lack SIEMs, which is the log management and incident control kind of stuff. And believe it or not, many lack network visibility. They don't even know how many devices they got or what's going on or their traffic or anything. So we are trying to work with them and educate and help them out on that. Road ahead, collective goals. This is where it's going to kind of look like some other Carlos's slides. It's like strengthen the interregional collaborations, prioritize digital ecosystems over simple connectivity, encourage knowledge sharing, and leverage the collective expertise. And in terms of staffing, these schools are never going to have big staffs. And I understand that higher ed, big R1s and everything, especially these days, are resource constraint, personnel constraint. But there's a big difference between resource constraint with 150-person IT staff and a 3-person IT staff. They're just a huge difference, and that's what we're facing in many of these schools. So, call to action. How do we best scale innovative CI initiatives across diverse institutions? MSCC is going to have to be, and we hope that you join us in being a voice and say, these institutions matter. So in national things, when there's discussions about the NAIR or whatever, we need to be included, and we need to have a voice there, but we need help sometimes because often people forget about those institutions. What additional roles can cybersecurity and identity management play on these campuses? That's an education thing, and we need to develop some strategies for sustainable collaboration amid shifting digital needs. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Al. Passionate and understand why. I would like to introduce our final speaker, and then we'll still have time for panel question and answer and discussion. Alex Bushell is from CANARIE, our regional partners in Canada. I have worked with Alex for a handful of years now, and very happy to get to be together with you in person. Alex has worked in progressive roles at CANARIE, the federal partner in Canada's National Research and Education Network, since 2016. In his current role as Director of Strategic Policy and International Relations, he ensures the organization's activities and initiatives are guided by sound policy analysis that support the evolution of positive relationships with stakeholders, domestic and international partners, and governments. Additionally, and this is big in my opinion in terms of ability to make impact, Alex serves as a member of the Global Research and Education Network CEO Forum, a group of executive leaders from a range of leading national and regional research and education networks from around the world. Let's welcome Alex Bushell.
Thank you very much. Anyway, I'll get going. The visual cues will come later. So as Anne said, CANARIE is equivalent to Internet2 in Canada. However, the slight difference is we do not interface very regularly, on the network side at least, with our institutions directly. The model is very delineated, and it's almost more like Géant in Europe, where our provincial partners do all of the connectivity between the institutions, and CANARIE then serves primarily as the international and interprovincial connection. And that's quite important when it comes to our cybersecurity journey. As Anne alluded to, last year my colleague Mark Wolf, who's the CTO, gave a presentation on how CANARIE connected Nunavut, one of the northern territories in Canada, via LeoSats, and that was a big piece to closing the loop on the NREN in Canada, and I'll come back to the Nunavut piece later. So our cybersecurity journey started in around 2016. There was a big incident in the federal national science agency equivalent, and by a large nation-state actor. And so the government came to us and they said, how much will it cost you to secure higher education? And we said, how big is your budget? We'll take all of it, and then 3 times more. And so, of course, we couldn't secure higher education, but we had to find a way to help support all the organizations in Canada. So we have just over 220 organizations serving further education in Canada, which seems like a small number compared to the US. But we also have a big problem of geography because, we have a massive landmass between that. And as I alluded to before, we didn't necessarily speak to the institutions on a daily basis. That was done through our provincial partners. So we had to come up with a new system for providing cybersecurity services into the institutions directly. So we came up with a model that was twofold. First of all, it was to work out what we could do. So we couldn't boil the ocean, so we came up with what our aim for the cybersecurity services would be. And if my slides were here, you would see that our aim was a really cool 3-letter acronym that spelled AIM. So it was A, to align the community to common frameworks. It was to invest in tools and services to help build up that baseline. And then possibly the most important one, the M, is measure. And so it was not only to have ways of showing us at CANARIE that what we were doing was having an impact. It was a way of showing the institutions who were using these tools and services, which, while there is no invoice sent to them, free is not free. There is still time required to do that. And finally, as we are funded primarily by the federal government, it gave us an amazing tool to go back to our funder and ask for additional funds to try and further this. The second problem we came to, obviously, was that we didn't have a way to interface regularly with these organizations. So we, in the initial instance, we leveraged heavily our provincial partners across the region. So we essentially utilized them in the early days as channel partners. We would provide the services directly. They would then go out to the institutions, do marketing, top-level support, and that way we could build these relationships in a very speedy manner to try and roll out these programs very quickly. So we had amazing uptake. Across the program, we had 97% uptake, which is impressive when you consider that some of these further education schools in Quebec in particular, they have something called CEGEPs, which is not something that exists anywhere else. If the few people who are here from the UK, they're kind of similar to sixth form colleges. So they're serving people who are 16, 17, 18, and their IT compared to a large university is a completely different scale.
Alex, can you hold up for 1 second? it'd be just great to have them and have them in the recording for later.
Yeah.
And we've got time. We've
Okay.
got a few minutes. Thank you.
I'll keep going more slowly. I talk quickly anyway. I'm aware of that, and so this gives me a bit of time to pause. We did that. We rolled out 6 services, 2 in measurement and benchmarking, which helped not only the institutions better understand where they were at, but also, as the national partner, allowed us to see where the major gaps were across the sector as a whole. And then we provided some tools that were more easy for the institution to operate quickly. So we provided a DNS firewall service. We were working on an IDS tool that all the institutions could put into their network, and we helped support some institutions pay for analysis tools that we could, again, compare all the way across. But one of the 6th one that we were providing was a threat intelligence feed. So we were curating a single data threat intelligence feed, working with partners in the US, Australia, the UK, and developing this just for the Canadian higher ed sector. And this really became the basis for what is our big impetus moving forward, which is we're working on a federated SOC for the sector. And so I know those of you in the US will say, well, we've had OmniSOC for a while. What's different about this thing that you're doing in Canada from what we already have in the US? And what we've really tried to do is take that model of utilizing our provincial partners' direct connections, both physically and human to human, with the institutions, and try and build that into our SOC model. So rather than having one central SOC housed at CANARIE, the model is federated so that institutions are working most directly with a regional SOC in their province or in a combination of provinces. That information is then fed up to a federating SOC at CANARIE, which can share the threat information between these regional SOCs, and then also is able to do some, higher level. This is the aspirational, able to do higher level threat hunting, AI tools, and things like that, so that each region is not having to duplicate the most expensive things, but that CANARIE can really fulfill its role as a federating function in our NREN. And there's a beautiful slide that I hope is in this deck, which shows how the SOC model maps to our federated NREN model. I would also be remiss if I didn't talk about our identity management. I will probably get this wrong. The expert is in the room and is watching me very closely from CANARIE, my colleague Jonathan. But we have a similar issue trying to ensure that these smaller organizations are able to implement our access and identity management services. We have very high percentage take-up in the university sector, something that Jonathan tells me when he shares with his international colleagues they're very jealous of. But that hides the fact that, one, our university sector in raw numbers is comparatively small, and 2, reaching these very last set of organizations is very difficult. We've creamed off the easy adopters, and now it's really about working on those ones that have very difficult ways of doing this. So our team, led by Jonathan, is really doing 2 things in both EDUROAM and in Federated Identity Management, which is our in-commons equivalent, and it's to really try and simplify the IT infrastructure for those smaller schools. So we have 2 pilots on at the moment, one for EDUROAM to move their Radius servers into the cloud so that they don't have to manage the infrastructure themselves, and then on the Federated Identity Management side to offer the back end as a managed service. So again, we're trying to make it so that these smaller institutions who don't have the same level of IT resource are still able to collaborate in these national level services. And I think that's me, without slides.
So Alex, you give whole new meaning to he knows his stuff.